and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. Ahead of the state elections, the Consider This team is on the road in Penang trying to get a sense of the issues that resonate on the ground. Today we are in Pantau, in the office of the Caretaker Chief Minister, Chow Kon Yeow. And he, of course, is a veteran of DAP politics. He has been the assembly person for Padang Kota since March of 2008 and is currently the MP for Batu Kawan. Chief Minister, how are you? Thank you so much for doing this interview with me. I appreciate your time. And if I may begin our conversation today by congratulating you on being named the DAP Chief Minister candidate for Penang. I'm quite curious to know, how would you rate your chances for re-election?
I think looking at the pre-election campaign, after dissolution, of course, there had been a lot of speculation as to how each state will fare in the 6 states where election will be held. By and large, I think we still receive positive rating for Pakatan Harapan in Penang. And I personally feel that we have a very strong chance of coming back as state government with 2/3 majority as well.
Okay, so you're confident of the 2/3 majority. What gives you that confidence? What is your sense of what's happening that allows you to be confident of 2/3?
Just now we talked about a lot of analysis. Most of them are based on the 2022 general election result, where, of course, undeniably, Perikatan Nasional won in many places, including 3 parliamentary seats in Seberang Perai, Penang. And because of that, analysis, of course, when you take the parliamentary result and superimpose onto the state constituency, Perikatan Nasional would also do well in several state constituencies. But that was in 2022, about 7 to 8 months ago. And that was a national election where state issue does not feature very prominently then. But now we are facing a state election where state government's performance will be put into focus compared to the general election.
Okay.
So I think at the end of my first term, we showcase our achievement over the past 5 years, whether in terms of investment, which is a key performance index as to how well the state is doing. And we also shows that Penang is doing well as a major export state. And also recently the Statistics Department also announced that Penang GDP has grown by 13.1%, the highest in the country. So all these are not figures from the state government, but from federal agencies monitoring economic performances.
I'm intrigued that you said you feel the state elections will be, in a sense, a referendum on the performance of the state government.
Yes,
There are also many analysts out there who say, well, actually, it's really driven by the personality of Anwar Ibrahim, whether this could be a litmus test for Anwar Ibrahim's leadership and his unity government. Do you feel that the dynamics at a federal level will be more important on voters' minds as opposed to the things that the state government has done for Penang?
Yeah, actually, I will be coming to that as well, because it is a state election nevertheless, so you cannot escape attention on the performance of the various state government. So, but I think what is so different between now and the general election is, as you pointed out, there is a new national unity government led by Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim, and that I believe make some difference into the choice of the rakyat as to the fact that now Malaysia is under a new government, and this new government is also on the same side as the Penang state government. So we can also expect much more approval for infrastructure project, which we have obtained the last few months. So it is something that we can look forward to, more development, stability, unity rather than disunity, stability, economic development, prosperity and all that.
This narrative of stability and cooperation that will foster more development for the state, has that been an easy sell to your voters, to the DAP support base, this cooperation with Barisan Nasional, with UMNO, after many decades of being on opposing sides?
That is also many of the scenario that this conversation will not end. I think we started with just a few factors, but you keep adding on more. I think very interesting. Of course, we need to go into the next important factor is transferability of the votes, whether our supporter will vote for Barisan Nasional and vice versa, and that would be crucial. If we can get the support and as a coalition partners, then I think the votes from both the coalition add up, will narrow the gap between us and Perikatan based on the general election result.
What's your thinking about transferability? Do you think that it is that simple, that in voters' minds?
It is not that simple. I think even today, there's a report that says if Najib supporter will not throw their weight to vote for Pakatan and Barisan if there's nothing done for Najib, for instance. All these are things that may affect the transferability of votes.
Okay, so that's your sense, that it's a lot more complex in voters' minds. DAP has won every state seat it has ever contested in since 2008. But this is going to be the first time that you'll have to make some concessions and work with different coalition or different partners. What's the thinking behind how to compromise? Are you going into this election thinking of your track record, or are you going into it prioritizing cooperation and stability with partners?
While we have considered all these factors, I believe our coalition partners also acknowledge the fact that the DAP can maintain all the 19 seats. So in our seats negotiation, DAP did not ask for any extra, and our coalition partners also did not ask for any seats from the DAP, acknowledging that it is best that we contribute all these seats to our victory, hopefully as major contributors to the seats in the coalition.
So the concessions would have to come at the expense of PKR and Amanah?
Because in Penang we also have Bersatu given seats to contest and they won, and now that they are not part of the coalition, the Bersatu seats have been offered to Barisan Nasional instead.
Okay.
So of course they would not get to contest as many seats as they used to, but definitely more than what they have won in Penang
previously. Yeah. Okay. In terms of performance, I'm wondering what would your analysis be, or what your thinking be, if PH and BN doesn't manage to retain the seats that it has, to achieve its target? What would that indicate to you, Chief Minister?
I think the challenge is to, in the face of a strong narrative by Perikatan Nasional, So I think at the moment, because of other factor like cost of living, it is an issue that impact the rakyat a lot. So they may see this as the most important issue when they cast their votes. Yeah.
So when you talk about the cost of living issue, are there things that can be done at the state level to help mitigate some of the effects that people are feeling? And what are the things that you have done during your tenure?
The state has undertaken some initiative to assist, for instance, those involved in farming, those involved in fishing activities. We have started giving out a TOL to cockles farmer in Seberang Perai so that they can have higher income. And of course, we also hand out financial assistance to this subsector of our economy, in the agriculture subsector. But I believe the most effective way, of course, is to ensure that inflation is controlled. Cost of our necessity items has been, the impact has been softened in the sense of many initiatives run by the various ministry, including the domestic trade industry, the food security and agriculture ministry, reaching out to the rakyat.
Do you because cost of living is so largely managed at the federal level, do you think that the state government gets blamed for prices of everyday things and the cost of living, cost of everyday life? I'm also including for housing, the cost of housing, the transportation costs within the state, which is under the state purview.
Although all these are important issues, I think when the state is doing well economically, and I share some of the impressive figures that we have, I think people still manage to get income and jobs in Penang. And of course, traffic congestion is a bigger issue in Penang than most places. So in our survey, I think traffic congestion ranks among the top issues that concerns the rakyat.
I'm curious to know. Tell me a little bit more about the issues. So you have done well in putting forth some of your accomplishments during your administration. I'm wondering what your read of the ground is. What do you understand to be specifically some of the concerns of the people of Penang?
I think there are two major concerns. One is traffic congestion. Second is cost of living. And the third is also housing.
Okay.
Whereas the rest, it did not feature very prominently. So traffic congestion is an issue that a lot of people brought out with me whenever I have engagement session with them. So I think there is a lot more has to be taken by the state and federal government as well. We have been working on the Penang Transport Master Plan for many years without much success. So now that we are in the same coalition with the federal government, and there is agreement of hope, we also got approval for our LRT, and there's a few infrastructure projects that we are also trying our very best to get federal approval to resolve congestion in Seberang Perai. We are also starting on the major roads package, and I have said, given a second term, one of my focus will be on implementing this major infrastructure project, which we have obtained approval towards the tail end of my first term.
Okay.
So there is nothing we can do with the first term, but of course nothing doesn't mean nothing. We have worked hard to get all the approval. So the second term would definitely see more implementation as to the project that had been approved, while also working on other projects that had not been approved yet.
Okay, so there are works in progress,
Yes, yes.
still outstanding.
Yeah.
How do you respond to the people who find flaws in the LRT approach, who have put forth other arguments or other alternatives, buses, different other modes of saying that LRT actually might not resolve the congestion issues in Penang, in fact might benefit tourists over locals. What is the thinking? How do you deal with those, particularly in civil society, who are vocal about their discontent over transportation plans?
I think if you look at only one LRT line in the city, of course, some of the concerns are valid. But if you look at Kuala Lumpur or Klang Valley, for instance, yes, it started with one line, and it got developed over almost 2-3 decades before you can see a more complete network of rail line in the city. And definitely, if Penang has only one line, it will not resolve all the congestion problem in the state. But if you have more than one line, 2-3 lines, as we have recommended in our Transport Master Plan study, then maybe we would see a situation that it can be an alternative to private commuters, private vehicles owner. Without proper public transport system, and with LRT or whatnot, you still have other supporting measures. It is not a standalone. You need to have the first mile, last mile connectivity. Bus may feature prominently in the first and last mile. And why we decided to be elevated is because also we have considered land acquisition, the corridor that we have to choose. That's why finally we opt for an elevated LRT system instead of what the NGO thinks is better. They think that just having the bus will be sufficient in the case of Penang.
How would you characterize your engagement with Penang civil society? Penang has quite a vocal and vibrant civil society scene. Many people are concerned about the future of Penang, the development ideology of Penang, sustainability of the state. How do you engage with them to ensure that they're not being sidelined, that they're being heard, and to feel like they are being taken seriously in the state's decision making?
Of course, in the first 10 years when I was EXCO member, we have several platforms for NGOs to engage with the state government. I think regular dialogue sessions were also held at that time, and some of them had been invited to sit in the Penang Transport Council, even appointed as a councillor for the local city council, where they had this opportunity to give their views on the way forward for. Basically, they are interested in transport issues, development issues as well, the local plan.
The PSI, the Penang South Island Reclamation, the environmental issues there.
But I can say that even as a state government, we don't receive any exemption from complying with all this regulation. All the more, as government, we have to lead by example. So even now, after so many years of trying, the South Reclamation, nothing has started yet officially because we have not obtained all the approvals. This is my commitment to the people. until and unless you get approval, you can't start. That's why you may read about it all the time, but nothing has started. Because at the moment, we still are waiting for the environmental management plan to be approved before work can start.
Okay, so
although the EIA
has been approved.
Yeah.
So as I understand it, the management plan will mitigate some of the environmental impacts.
That is.
It's the checklist.
Yeah, the plan that, on how you propose to mitigate the condition or fulfill the conditions set by DOE when they approve the project.
Chief Minister, the PSI has received, the PSI, I think a lot of people are concerned that what began as a project to raise money for public transportation has shifted into a land bank expansion exercise. What is your thinking of your development ideology for Penang? Is it, as critics claim, too closely tied to real estate? Is it too real estate driven in thinking that creating more real estate will be the engine of growth for the state?
To go back to your earlier question, yes, the original proposal was to finance or to fund the infrastructure project from the revenue obtained from the island reclamation. And definitely the island is reclaimed for a purpose that is also for development. You just don't reclaim and then sell the land for nothing. It will definitely be turned into the new township, the new industrial park for the island, for the Penang Island as a whole, and an extension from what we have in Baharu, Bayang Lepas, into the new reclaimed island. So that would be whether it is sufficient to fund the LRT project. I think now you got the answer in the sense even the first island would not be sufficient to fund the LRT first line. We would have to move into the second island. But now that the federal has announced they will take over, so that pressure of getting the island reclaimed to finance the LRT is a lesson, so that we, in fact, were willing, when we had considered to reduce the size of the reclamation to just the first island, because that burden of getting revenue from the land sales to finance the infra project had been taken off. Yeah.
Right, and those who say, why are you focusing on reclaiming more land when we have such land bank or a land mass in the mainland? How would you then respond to concerns of unequal growth and that development is too island-centric, neglecting Seberang Perai?
Even I was under the perception that the Seberang Perai is less developed than the island, which may be true in the past. The fact that the island grew and got developed much earlier than Seberang Perai. But just taking industrial park development as an example, you can only see one industrial park on the island, which is Bayang Baru and Bayang Lepas. But if you cross over to Seberang Perai, there are about 9 other industrial parks in the state located in Seberang Perai, starting from the Old Perai Industrial Park to Phuket Tengah, Phuket Minyak, Pematang Tinggi, Waldo, Science Park, Batu Kawan, Bairam. So it is.
So is the perception
inaccurate? Yes, the
perception. So is the perception of unequal growth inaccurate, factually inaccurate?
Factually inaccurate.
So, but why do you think it persists? Why do you think so many people still think
Because
the mainland is still underdeveloped compared
because
to
people
island.
maybe, and these facts are not widely publicized. The island mentality is always there. Yeah. So as we understand Seberang Perai better, then you can see that actually there is great potential for growth in Seberang Perai, which I reiterated often, that the future of Penang is in Seberang Perai.
Okay, so if you do win a second term, talk to me about your vision to rebalance the growth between island and Seberang so that the entire state of Penang has equitable development.
The fact that the island has little or no more land for industrial expansion, that is a fact. Of course, with the reclaimed island, you may have another 700 acres as compared to Seberang Perai. Even when you talk about big land mass in Seberang Perai, they are mostly privately owned land. And if government wants to open up the land for industrial park, government has to acquire all this land. But I think since 2 years ago, probably because Penang Development Corporation, which is the state economic arm, faced land readiness issue. That means we cannot get land ready fast enough to meet the investors' requirement. So that opened an opportunity for private developer to buy estate land to turn it into industrial park. That means that is the privately owned and managed industrial park, which I think is quite common in states like Johor and Selangor. But in Penang, because all this while the PDC has been driving and sort of a monopoly over industrial park development. But I think of the last 2 years, there are several private developer companies who seize the opportunity and they venture into industrial property development as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much for speaking with me today. I appreciate your time. That was my conversation with Caretaker Chief Minister and DAP Chief Minister candidate Chow Kon Yeow. And that wraps up this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris, signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching, and good night.